Hello YouTube and welcome back to another edition of 3 Wide. This week, the Monster Energy NASCAR Cup Series is at Indianapolis Motor Speedway for the Brickyard 400. Going into this weekend's race, the first race in September at Indianapolis Motor Speedway for the Cup Series, we all were expecting rain when we looked at the forecast last week to see what the weather changes would be from last year's race to this year's race. And the changes from last year's race to this year's race, lo and behold, was that you wouldn't see a car on track until Monday. If you went to Indianapolis Motor Speedway any day except Monday, the only cars you would have saw were Air Titans and cars in the parking lot. But then when it came to racing on Monday, this is one of the better Brickyards in recent history, but considering how bad the races have been in recent history, with the exception of last year's Wreckfest, this race was pretty okay. With the cars not being on track until the race started on Monday, we saw many teams just take many chances to try to get up front and keep their track position, and this would be in play for the entire race. But all in all, this was a great Brickyard 400 for the recent history of the Cup Series at IMS. So now we'll get into my 3 takeaways from the Brickyard 400. Number 1, strategy. Going into the race this weekend at IMS, I was wondering how the tires would play a role in this race. The track that gets compared to Indianapolis the most on the Cup schedule is Pocono, and as we saw at Pocono, tires didn't really matter. It was kind of a track position race. So this had me wondering how the tires would be at Indianapolis. And with the strategy that was being called throughout this race, I think the tires held up pretty well. We only had a couple tire failures throughout the race, and there was a wide range of strategy throughout this race, where at some points there was about 20 laps between cars when they would pit. With a strategy that was put into place for all teams, we had a whole different cast of characters leading laps at Indianapolis. Denny Hamlin led 37 laps, Clint Bowyer also led 37 laps, Kyle Busch led 27 laps, Kevin Harvick led 22 laps, Kurt Busch led 19 laps, Brad Keselowski led 9 laps, Matt Kenseth led 5 laps, William Byron led 3 laps, and Ryan Blaney led 1 lap. With the strategy that was put into place at Indy this week, we had a feeling throughout this race that really anyone could potentially win, which I didn't think was really a feeling we'd get going into this weekend's cutoff race at IMS. But it seems like the Cup Series had found a little something here to make this race semi-exciting. So now we'll see next year, when the cars come back to the track, how the real changes at IMS with this month change will actually be put into place if the race runs on a Sunday and they have all track time with practice and qualifying. So now on to number 2. Matt Kenseth gives the 6 car life. Ever since Mark Martin stepped out of the 6 car for Roush Racing, the 6 car has been a joke. They've won 1 race with David Reagan at Daytona in 2011, but other than that, most NASCAR fans have been wondering what happened to the 6 car and more importantly, what's happened to Roush Racing. But at Indianapolis Motor Speedway, Matt Kenseth almost won in this 6 car, off of just pure speed, not luck and not like a drafting package at Daytona or Talladega. Matt Kenseth won stage 2. What will be looked at as a bright point for the Roush team this season was actually probably their downfall and taking them out of contention for the race win. During that second stage, people were pitting off to get the track position to set up for the last stage. Matt Kenseth's car, for some reason, stayed out and won the stage. The thing that was weird about Matt Kenseth winning this stage was that it seemed that he knew more that was going on than his crew chief when he came on the radio and said, "We probably should have pit there to keep our track position," which later led to his crew chief saying, "Yeah, we should have to keep our track position. We would be in a better spot." But even after all that, Matt Kenseth's car was still fast and still semi had contention to get up there. He was running pretty well, and then the final pit stops happened, where his car fell off the jack and Roush was going to Roush and they blew the race, and Matt Kenseth ended up getting a worse finish than he probably should have. He ended up in 12th, which is a good finish for that 6 car, but the way it was running in this race, he probably should have ended up with the top 5, if not won this race. With the recent performances that Matt Kenseth has been putting on in the 6 car running pretty well, this has me wondering to next year, what's Matt Kenseth going to do? I believe he should be full-time in a ride. Whether it be this 6 car, he's in the 32 since Matt Benedetto is leaving, he goes to one of the JTG cars, considering they're trying to shake up their driver lineup, or if by some chance he gets that 41 at Stewart-Haas and maybe can have one last great run and maybe even get a championship out of it at Stewart-Haas Racing. But in the end, at this race at IMS, Matt Kenseth was one of the bright spots of this race and made this race more entertaining than it probably would have been if he wasn't there, or if someone else was just running randomly well. I would have just loved to have seen the announcers after they've been pushing all race that the only way that Jimmy Johnson or Alex Bowman could get bounced out is if someone new wins. But Matt Kenseth wins, but he doesn't get in the playoffs because he hasn't run all the races, or he's not in a certain spot in points, and then they have to just go back on everything they've been saying all race. But it didn't happen because the car fell off the jack and they had weird strategy at the end that kind of backfired on him. So now we'll move on to number 3. Brad Keselowski goes back to back. After last week's race in Darlington, we were wondering if the number 2 car and overall if Penske has changed something to make themselves run better. And this week at Indianapolis, Brad Keselowski showed up and got a late race pass for the win when he had better tires than Denny Hamlin to get his 2nd win in a a row, and Roger Penske's first Brickyard 400. With Roger Penske being one of 2 owners in the Cup Series who I believe still loves Indianapolis and thinks it's one of the great things about motorsports, the other owner's Tony Stewart. I'm happy that Brad got this win for Roger Penske. He ended up sweeping all the top races at Indianapolis Motor Speedway this year. He won both the Indianapolis Grand Prix and Indianapolis 500 with Will Power, and then he came back and won the Brickyard 400 with Brad. It was a 2-car on this hot streak. We'll see if he can carry this momentum into the playoffs and maybe be even one of the big 3 considering what the 78's been doing, or be at the very least one of the big 4 and punch his way into Homestead, where he'll just be one of the great drivers who's turned it on for the playoffs, kind of like Tony Stewart's done back in the day for the chase. So now putting Indianapolis behind us, we'll get into my 3 things to look ahead to for next week's race, the first round of the playoffs at Las Vegas Motor Speedway for the South Point 400. Number 1, will the 78's bad luck end? In the last 4 races for the defending Cup champion Martin Truex Jr. and the whole 78 Furniture Road team, it's thus been a pretty poor effort considering he's one of the top 3 drivers. He finished 14th at Michigan, he had the wreck at Bristol and finished 30th. At Darlington he finished 11th, and I don't really remember him being really one of the guys at any point. And then this week at IMS, he had a brake go soft, it blew, and that was the end of his day, and he'd finish last. And now with the announcement that the 78 team's closing up shop and are going to be done after this season, and Truex is more than likely going to the 19 for Joe Gibbs. Anytime this team's going to have a problem and have some adversity, everyone's going to wonder, is Furniture Row quitting? Are the team turning on Truex? Are Pert and Truex having problems? There's going to be a bunch of stuff thrown out. So if Truex can turn this thing around, I believe, and win this championship, this will be better than what he did last year. With the team closing down and all the potential questions that will be thrown at him in these next 10 weeks in the playoffs. Now on to number 2, the first playoff race in Las Vegas. In the past for the Cup Series, this date would either be a Richmond race or the New Hampshire race. But this year, it's going to be Las Vegas. For the first time, the Cup Series is going to be going there twice. So now we'll see how the Cup cars will perform at Las Vegas the second time around. We were here for the first race earlier in the year. Kevin Harvick led 214 laps and dominated this race. But as we've seen from other races where there's been a slight change, such as Chicagoland and in this last past race at Indianapolis, that the races seem to tend to get a little bit better, or in Chicago's case, get a lot better. So now we'll see how the cars react to Las Vegas this time of year, and if they'll put on one of the better races of the season, or just a better Las Vegas race. And if we really think about it, the second race at Charlotte used to be a lot better than the Coke 600, but now that's a Roval. So maybe, just maybe, this Las Vegas race will be one of the races we'll be talking about for a long time. I'm not going to hold my breath on that. So now on to number 3. Will Brad Keselowski go for 3 in a row? Earlier in this season, we were all wondering what's wrong with Penske, why they weren't performing well. But in these past couple races, Brad Keselowski's been the guy to beat, and he's ended up being the guy in victory lane. So now with this go around in Las Vegas, this has me wondering, will Brad Keselowski go for 3 in a row and already punch his way into the next round of the playoffs with a win at Las Vegas? This will be a true test to see if Penske's actually made gains on their 1.5-mile cars, considering Darlington's is not like any other track on the schedule, and Brad was really the second best car there. Kyle Larson should have won that race by a landslide. And Indianapolis is kind of like Pocono and is nothing like any other track on the schedule left this season. But we can kind of see translations between there and 1.5 miles, considering it's just based on aerodynamics and pure speed. So this will be the true test for Penske this week at Las Vegas. So now here are my predictions for the 4 drivers who will be eliminated in the first round of the playoffs. Number 1 is Jimmy Johnson. He's been awful all season. I don't see this thing turning around right now. Number 2 is Austin Dillon. He was running like 25th in points. He shouldn't be here to begin with. Number 3 is Eric Almirola. I know he's been running good in the past, but it seems like he's just done nothing in these past couple weeks to maybe have people thinking that he will move on, and I think this will be one of the big names who will be bounced in the first round of the playoffs. And the 4th guy, I believe it comes down to between Kurt Busch and Ryan Blaney. And maybe this is me just buying into the Penske hype a little too much, but I think Kurt Busch will be the guy to be knocked out of the first round of these playoffs. Usually in the playoffs, we have someone who's been running pretty well and is a big name get bounced in the first round of the playoffs. Usually that would be Jimmy Johnson in most years, since I picked him earlier. But Jimmy Johnson's been just another guy this season. So that honor will go to Kurt Busch, and I think he won't make it out of the first round of the playoffs. With all this Ganassi stuff swirling around him, maybe Stewart-Haas will start giving him some of the old Danica stuff we'll be seeing, and he'll be done sooner than everyone probably thinks. So that'll do it for 3Y this week. Leave your thoughts about Indy in the comment section below, what you think is going to happen in Las Vegas, and your playoff predictions there too. If you liked this video, hit the like button. If you like what I'm doing here, hit the subscribe button. And as always, thanks for watching.